Okay, we are live. Hello, everyone. I am Dr. Garrett Smith, also known as the Nutrition Detective, and we have a show today that I'm really excited about. I hope we have time to get to some questions. If you have questions and you've subscribed to the channel, then you can post them in the live chat, but I put a lot of work into researching this morning about a topic that is of importance to just about everybody in terms of cancer. And everybody's wondering, how do I prevent this? How do I address this? I don't say treat because legally I'm not allowed to go there as a naturopathic physician. So I don't talk about that. So anyway, what I want to go over first, just so you guys know, in the chat, there's a link to a Google Doc that has these testimonials that I'm about to go over in it. And it's got the research links that I'm going to cover today. I'll still post them here in the chat. And then you guys are going to want to share this with the people you love, because this is the root of these problems. Cancer is toxicity, full stop. It is. So, and it's rooted in your liver not being able to deal with that toxicity and the toxic bile and where it's going, where it's not supposed to. So let's get into the testimonials first. So testimonial number 1. This was even before the vitamin A detox stuff that I was doing, the vitamin A toxicity. So here we go. Quote, "My periods have become much closer together compared to before and becoming more predictable. Now my cycles are averaging about 31 to 35 days, which is a huge improvement from 65 to 75 days. Dr. G, I just wanted to let you know that my diet changes have been pretty much complete and I cycled this month. First time since March. So you were correct. A little more time is what I needed." So for those of you who haven't seen my vitamin A and infertility video and my birth control and vitamin A toxicity video, I would suggest you watch those on this channel. Oh, wait, I totally forgot. For somebody last week who was asking a question about the connection between vitamin A toxicity and miscarriage, Grant Generous sent me a paper. Let me see. How am I going to find this? There we go. Preterm births, early births and vitamin A. So let me get that. Here's that link. I hope the person who's listening watches this and sees it. So now, where did I just found that? And now I'm trying to remember which link it was. There it is. Okay. Here it is. Let me open up that paper. So the paper is called Identification of Indicators for Preterm Birth Using Retinoid, which is vitamin A, Metabolites. So let's see. Well, yeah, I'll just let you guys look at it. Is it connected? Yes. Vitamin A toxicity and cholestasis are connected to every single problem of pregnancy and birth and nursing that you can imagine. We already know over 3,000 units a day of vitamin A is suspected of being connected with birth defects. So if it can actually cause birth defects in an unborn child, do you think it could cause preterm birth? Do you think it could cause miscarriage? Do you think it could cause infertility in the first place? Do you think it could cause many of these problems that women are dealing with in terms of pregnancy and birth and fertility? And then men, I'm not going to post them here, but I do have quite a few studies basically showing that vitamin A destroys your testicles, including the one from Spain, where all you organ meat lovers, you liver lovers, you got to watch my video on how liver is just a poison food. And then watch the video about how natural and synthetic vitamin A are the same. And then realize this Spain study, they distinctly found that the men who ate more, young men who ate more organ meats had worse sperm motility, and I think they may have had lower sperm counts. Men, your fertility is being attacked by vitamin A also. So, yeah. Let's go into the second testimonial. This one is much more recent. This is within the last month. So here we go. Quote, "My husband has been suffering from angina, chest pain, and kidney pain, and I have been suffering from horrible GERD, acid reflux, and reflux attacks for several years. We tried all kinds of holistic therapies, but none worked. We even tried to be vegans, and that didn't work. And we went on a strict alkaline diet. I felt good on the alkaline diet for about a month, duration paradox, and then all my symptoms came back with a vengeance. My husband got worse on this diet. He lost his appetite completely and lost a lot of weight. He ended up in the hospital getting 3 stents for his angina, after which he continued to have angina pain and could only take very slow and short walks. To make things worse, he caught COVID from a vaccinated roommate in the hospital, and then I got it too. Safe and effective. Anyway, I know this sounds like a country song, but everything turned around once we found and started implementing the vitamin A toxicity diet and stopping vitamin D supplements and other supplements about 6 weeks ago. My GERD symptoms are gone. I am going through a bit of a healing crisis as a tremendous amount of bile is making its exit from my overly toxic liver. I know this is just a phase. My husband is eating better than ever. He can walk long and fast and has no angina pain. The lactoferrin is especially helping him a lot. We finally have hope and know we came to the right place. We are very much looking forward to having our consultations with Dr. Smith in 2 weeks. Thank you so much." End quote. So I just want to emphasize that these folks just started on the Love Your Liver program, kind of my vitamin A detox program. This testimonial is before they worked with me. And we just recently had our consultation, and we're getting them started on more stuff, and more stuff than they were doing before. And we will likely see even better testimonials in the future. So this is the kind of work we are doing. We are helping the body get rid of toxins that it's already stored. We are avoiding putting more toxins in, and most of you out there, if you're not familiar with my work, most of you think you're putting good things in your body, and you're poisoning your liver. 99% of the supplements out there are garbage poison for your liver. I use, at the most you could say I use 5, maybe 6 different supplements that each only have one ingredient. And that's it. And I talk to other people about other things they might do with certain specific supplements to help very specific situations, always with the goal of them getting off of those extra supplements. And then the mineral supplements that I use are dosed by testing, not guessing, then addressing. That's what we do. This is what we call clinical nutrition. This is the treatment of disease via specific nutrition. That is what I do. So that's the testimonials and anecdotes for the day. And now we're going to go into connecting cancer to bile and cholestasis and liver injury, which are the same terms. Cholestasis and liver injury are basically the same thing. And then after that, we're going to go in, because in the research, I believe that lactoferrin positively helps cholestasis, liver injury, bile issues. And then we get to see if logically, if cholestasis and bile are connected to cancer. And lactoferrin, I believe in theory, helps fix cholestasis and liver injury and bile issues. Then we should see in the research that lactoferrin helps or seems to positively affect cancer. We're just connecting the dots here, right? That's all I do, is I just connect the dots. So let's get into it. First study. So first we're going to connect bile to, so let me go in, sorry, let me back up. For you new watchers, new listeners, new folks who are starting to realize that nearly everything you learned in nutrition previously is probably hot garbage and you need to relearn most of it. There's the ones who are coming back, this is awesome. But those of you who are new to this, here we go. Here's the paper, Intrahepatic Cholestasis of Pregnancy and Cancer, Immune-Mediated and Cardiovascular Diseases, a Population-Based Cohort Study. Actually, I forgot. I was going to back up to tell you guys, what is cholestasis? What is liver injury? Why is toxic bile getting into our bloodstream and places where it's not supposed to be so important? How does this happen? Okay. Many of the things that we do and take and force upon ourselves, I mean, it can be as simple as not getting enough sunlight. It can be eating a high-fat diet for you keto and carnivore people and low-carb people. High-fat diets induce cholestasis. It can be eating a high-fructose diet, whether it's natural fructose or whether it's, synthetic fructose. It can be pokey jabs. It can be pharmaceuticals. It can be, your fancy antioxidant supplements, or you eating all these brightly colored foods. It can be vitamin A toxicity. It can be vitamin D supplements. It can be also copper toxicity, manganese toxicity, zinc deficiency, molybdenum deficiency. It can be any or all of these things combining lack of exercise. One of the ways your liver is not a muscle, so one of the things that you can do to help it move stuff when you feel good enough, if you don't feel good right now, whatever exercise you tolerate is the right amount, and whatever exercise you don't tolerate well is too much. But anyway, kind of the body loves massages. And if you think of your core muscles contracting and squeezing, they kind of massage and move stuff in your liver. So exercise is a good thing for your liver, unless you're so sick that doing too much of it causes you to dump too much bile into your blood. Okay, this is not easy. It's simple but not easy. And this thing that we're talking about right now, for those of you who are complete do-it-yourselfers and you look at the Love Your Liver program and you go, I don't need to spend any money on that. I'll just go do this myself. I'll look up these key terms in the research. You're going to mess yourself up. We have 3 years now of experimentation and seeing what works. And I've been figuring out what looks pretty in the research and causes disasters later. All those liver herbs you think are helpful, they're not. Long-term, they cause problems. Your liver doesn't have a herb deficiency. It never did. But anyway, cholestasis. Cholestasis is when your liver gets injured from all those things I mentioned. Liver injury. Cholestasis means bile stagnation. It means the bile is not moving in the right direction. Just like if a creek is stagnant, the water is not flowing in the right direction. It's stuck. But with cholestasis in your body, the bile can actually go backwards. In your liver, if the bile goes backwards, it goes into the blood. This is called intrahepatic cholestasis inside the liver. There's extrahepatic cholestasis, which happens in the bigger bile ducts. And that's where the bile is either stagnant or going backwards. Think of this as like gallstones. The bile is just sitting there marinating in your gallbladder. And what happens when you have things that are stagnant? Things start to form in there, like crystallize, precipitate, like gallstones. Things, you get sludge. What happens, just think of a river where the water doesn't move. It starts growing moss. It starts growing just algae. It starts looking nasty with like redness in it. That's iron accumulating in there. So you don't want stagnation. Other extrahepatic cholestasis can look like acid reflux, hiatal hernias. It can look like nausea. Ladies, when you're pregnant, morning sickness, that's bile going back up into your stomach. So that's extrahepatic cholestasis. Then the final one is down in your gut, what they call leaky gut. Your leaky gut is caused by toxic bile basically burning holes through your gut. That is leaky gut. That's why all your approaches to leaky gut didn't work before, because you weren't addressing the actual problem. So when you get leaky gut, people worry about these food proteins going into your bloodstream, which is related to your food allergies. But remember, it's rooted in the bile, and you're getting toxic bile that is getting into your bloodstream that way. And then you have the most toxic fluid in your body is bile. So if it's getting into your bloodstream via your liver or via your intestines, it goes everywhere the blood goes in your body, which means it can cause problems nearly anywhere and everywhere in your body. And the way it generally happens is your weakest link, which could be genetic, it could be determined by your nutrients, it could be determined by your toxicities. There's all sorts of things that can determine where your weak link is. It attacks that weak link first. That's your first place of getting sick, disease. And then if it continues, which, just so you know, cholestasis, if it's not addressed, generally gets worse. And if you're doing things, if you think this is a game and you're going to go do it on your own, good luck, because if you experiment, if you go and look in the research and you pick wrong, you pick the wrong thing to do, you're going to make it worse. You're going to drive yourself deeper. So then the cholestasis generally gets worse over time, and then your second weak link breaks. And then your third weak link breaks. And then your fourth weak link breaks. People who have looked into the autoimmune research, for those of you who have autoimmune issues, which is a toxicity issue, full stop, they tend to know that once you get one autoimmune disease, first weak link, you tend to get a second, and maybe a third, and maybe a fourth. Those are just the weak links breaking. That's just the most obvious one. That's the most obvious pattern, okay? So this is, in my opinion, and as I believe you'll start to get the gist of in these research papers that I found today, this is the root cause, not associated with any protocol. This is the root cause of all chronic disease. Okay? Is your stored up toxicity in your liver being released back into your blood because of liver injury, aka cholestasis. So what they're saying here, this study, intrahepatic cholestasis of pregnancy and cancer, immune-mediated and cardiovascular diseases, heart diseases, a population-based cohort study. I'm going to read the bolded parts. Intrahepatic cholestasis of pregnancy, ICP, is the most common liver disease in pregnancy. When you start hearing most common, and I'm saying this is everybody's chronic disease, that's where you should pay attention. It is associated with hepatobiliary, that's liver and bile duct diseases, that might predispose to cancer, and also with gestational diabetes. We went over diabetes in last week's Love Your Liver program. And preeclampsia. In this study, we examined associations between intrahepatic cholestasis of pregnancy and cancer and immune-mediated, autoimmune, and cardiovascular diseases. Results. We're going to cover this later. ICP, intrahepatic cholestasis of pregnancy, was not associated with later overall cancer, but it was associated with later liver and biliary tree cancer. Okay, so it wasn't associated with overall cancer, but it's associated with liver cancer and bile duct cancer. Oh, okay. It's like they're trying to avoid saying that it's actually a problem. Intrahepatic cholestasis of pregnancy was also associated with later immune-mediated diseases, and specifically diabetes mellitus, thyroid disease, psoriasis, inflammatory polyarthropathies, that's multiple joint pains, like systemic autoimmune conditions, and Crohn's disease, but not ulcerative colitis. Women with intrahepatic cholestasis of pregnancy also had a small increased risk of later cardiovascular disease, that's heart disease. Conclusions: women with intrahepatic cholestasis of pregnancy have increased risk of later hepatobiliary, liver and bile duct cancer, and immune-mediated and cardiovascular diseases. Did you hear all those diseases that were connected with cholestasis? Then realize that modern medicine is terrible They don't want to find disease that they can't treat with a med. They don't want. What does modern medicine drugs do to the liver in general? Generally, it destroys the liver. So why do they not want to find liver-related diseases early? Because they have no treatment to sell you. All their treatments make the problem worse. Why do you think you hear about side effects on all the pharmaceutical medications? Where do you think those medications are affecting that could cause all of these symptoms all over the body? It's the liver. Okay? So let's go into this one now. Here's another one about bile acids and cancer. Bile acid malabsorption as a consequence of cancer treatment, prevalence and management in the National Leading Center. Here's the quote. Here's the start of the quote. Bile acid malabsorption is a common, albeit a very underdiagnosed, gosh, they're missing it, gastroenterology condition, especially in cancer cohort of patients. Keywords: bile acids, common, underdiagnosed, especially in cancer patients. Continuing, the aim was to establish prevalence of bile acid malabsorption and management in patients who underwent treatment for malignancy. Oh, so you're saying treatments might cause treatments like, what do? Cut, burn, drug? That's how they treat cancer? And what do if they're going to cut you? They give you all sorts of drugs before they cut you. Cut, burn, drug, and by burn, we're talking radiation. Drug, chemotherapy, good old cancer chemotherapy. They're going to give you something that they hope, they're going to give you a poison, a known poison. Chemotherapy is always poison. That's by definition, chemical therapy. And they're going to hope that it kills the cancer cells before it kills you. Eventually, it's going to kill you. And treating one toxicity called cancer with another toxicity called chemo ends up, you might relieve the symptoms. And I'm not going to go into this here, but how does it relieve the symptoms? It affects your bile. It stops your liver from making as much bile. So you relieve the symptoms, but later it comes back and it's worse. So then they give you more poison until eventually they tell you, even our strongest poison isn't going to work anymore. Or our strongest poison is going to kill you and you're dead. Okay, so here we go. In total, 265 consecutive patients were reviewed. Out of those, 87 out of 265, 33% of patients were diagnosed with bile acid malabsorption. Mean age was 59 plus or minus 12 years. The largest group were females with gynecological cancer, followed by the hematology blood problems group, colorectal/anal, prostate, upper gastrointestinal cancer, another previous malignancy. Severe bile acid malabsorption was most common in hematology and gynecological group. So as they messed up people's liver with their poison treatments, they caused bile acid problems. They're saying bile acid malabsorption, what it is that their bile is so toxic that it's damaging their gut lining, and their body says, get this crap out of me ASAP. And so the normal enterohepatic circulation of bile acids isn't happening. The body is trying to poop it out as quickly as possible because it is so toxic. If you drank acid, your body would want to poop out that acid as much as possible, quickly as possible. That's why, for those of you who don't know, that's why if you eat spicy food, capsaicin, which is a poison, if you eat too much of it, that's why you get diarrhea. And that's why you feel it burning your bunghole, is because it's a poison. So eat all your spicy food you want. Study in Mexico City showed 17 times higher rate of stomach cancer in those who ate the most spicy food. But we're told capsaicin is anti-inflammatory and we should eat lots of spicy food. No. Wrong. Okay, let's go into this. More on bile acids and cancer. A pseudo-targeted metabolomic study based on serum bile acids, that's bile acids in the blood, profiling for the differential diagnosis of benign, and malignant breast lesions. Let me back up one second here. A healthy person, a truly healthy person, should have zero bile in their blood. Zero. Not just less, but as you get less in your blood, you will tend to get healthier. You should have zero bile in your blood. It's not supposed to go there. It goes from your liver to your bile ducts to your intestines to either be pooped out or it comes back directly to the liver via the enterohepatic circulation. If you have bile in your blood, you either have intrahepatic cholestasis, extrahepatic cholestasis, or leaky gut. Introduction, here's the quote. Breast cancer has become the most commonly diagnosed cancer worldwide. It is very critical for the differential diagnosis between breast cancer and benign breast diseases. The characteristics of serum bile acids profiling in patients with benign breast diseases and breast cancer was elucidated so that potential biomarkers could be found out, not good English here, could be found out for the differential diagnosis of breast cancer and benign breast disease. I skipped forward to the conclusion. Conclusion, the profile of serum bile acids in women with breast cancer was quite different from that in patients with benign breast diseases. So, there's two things that cause you problems. So first of all, did they all have bile in their blood? Yeah, that doesn't mean it's normal. Like, is being healthy normal these days? Absolutely not. Like really, if you get down to it, if you question anybody and you really dig down to it, no one is as healthy as they want to be. People might BS you and say, oh, I'm totally healthy. I have no health problems. No, they don't. They are hiding stuff. This is the days of YouTube and just being fake and lying to everybody. Okay. I'm not going to say I'm perfectly healthy. I have the guts to do that. Am I working on it? Yeah. Have I gotten rid of psoriasis? Have I gotten rid of prostate problems? Have I gotten rid of chronic insomnia? Have I gotten rid of my complex tear of my meniscus via other treatments and other approaches that I do, combined with the nutrition that I do? Yeah, I fix things. That's what I do. Am I as good as I want to be yet? No, I'm okay with that. Always strive for better. Better is better. I want to be better. But I've gotten rid of so many things already, and that's what I help people do. So that there's two things that cause the bile problems. The first thing is bile in the blood. The second thing that can be completely different is what they call the bile acid profile or the bile acid pattern. I believe the paper I saw that mentioned this said that there have been 55 different bile acids identified in human serum, blood. 55 different bile acids. And I can tell you that LabCorp, who I use, if you buy all of their tests that test bile acids in the blood, guess how many bile acids you can test? I went over this on my video about my labs. There's 6 different bile acids they test. 6 out of 55. So, do you think they're getting the whole picture? Do you think they want to get the whole picture? I don't know, it's weird. Why would they not? But anyway, so I went over in a previous live stream how they had, I want you to imagine this, they had 4 different groups of thyroid patients or people in the study. They had a control group, which was not diagnosed with thyroid problems and was not on any thyroid medications, the control group, the normal group. Then they had a group that was hypothyroid, low thyroid function. Then they had a group that was hyperthyroid, which is autoimmune by definition. And then they had a group that was hypothyroid but had been medicated back to normal. And what they found was they found a different bile acid profile or pattern in all of these groups. They actually said that they had the same amount of serum bile acids. So they all had bile acids in their blood. So they all probably had some health problems. But they found distinctly different patterns in the bile acids. So you could have the same amount of total bile acids as somebody else. But if your pattern's different, you're going to manifest a different disease, which is just what they said here. Benign breast disease had a very different pattern of bile acids than breast cancer did. Okay? But they all had bile in the blood, which don't. And so they all had bile in the blood, and some of them had benign breast disease, and some of them were progressed to breast cancer. Do you see that? We don't want bile in the blood. That's what we fix. Next study, bile acids in human breast cyst fluid, which is considered a precursor to breast cancer. The identification of lithocholic acid. Before I start, lithocholic acid is what's called a secondary bile acid. Lithocholic acid is, primary bile acids are made by your liver. They go inside your gut. If you have a messed up gut biome, which nearly everybody does who doesn't understand how to fix it, and doesn't understand that bile is at the root cause of your messed up gut biome, the primary bile acids are changed by certain bacteria in your gut into secondary bile acids, which are the most poisonous ones you could have. You don't want them, okay? So what are they saying here? They're finding bile acids in human breast cyst fluid, and they're identifying lithocholic acid, a secondary bile acid. Lithocholic acid is extremely associated with colon cancer and high-fat diets. They're saying they find, how would bile acids get from your liver and the bile ducts and your intestines to the breasts? How would they get there? Other than going into the blood where they're not supposed to be, which is cholestasis, which is liver injury. Anyway, deoxycholic acid, chenodeoxycholic acid, another secondary bile acid, and cholic acid were detected in 11 of 12 samples of breast cyst fluid. Lithocholic acid, a reported co-carcinogen, was detected in 6 of the 12 samples of breast cyst fluid. This is the first report of the presence of lithocholic acid in breast cyst fluid with confirmation by mass spectrometry. Wow, they weren't looking for it before? Weird. Yet to be elucidated are the mechanisms of accumulation of bile acids in breast cyst fluid, and whether levels of particular bile acids in breast cyst fluid may serve to identify that small subset of women with fibrocystic disease. How many of you out there, ladies, have fibrocystic stuff going on in your breast? At risk of developing breast cancer. You know what I haven't been doing? I haven't been putting the links in the chat. Let me do this. There's one. Here's the next one. Oh, Bob, when you say not ulcerative colitis, yeah, I just helped somebody with ulcerative colitis just the other day. Does doing this fix ulcerative colitis? Yeah, and I bet I could go and find some other papers that would show cholestasis linked to ulcerative colitis without much of a problem. 1, 2, 3, 4. Here's this one. Let me catch up to where I was. Are we on this one yet? I'll just put it anyway. We'll fully catch up. They may be slightly out of order, but I don't have time to fix that right now. So let's get back into it. Okay. So here, one specific to breast cancer. Bile acids influence the growth, estrogen receptors, and estrogen-regulated proteins of MCF7 human breast cancer cells. Now, normally I don't like in vitro studies too much, where they're doing the petri dish idea of studies, but I thought this was interesting. The effects of the major human serum bile acid, glycochenodeoxycholic acid, GCDC, as well as unconjugated chenodeoxycholic acid, CDC, on the MCF7 human breast cancer cell line have been studied in vitro under estrogen and bile acid deprived culture conditions. GCDC increased the growth of the breast cancer cells over the range of 10 to 300 micromoles. In contrast, 10 micromoles CDC tended to reduce cell growth. So they just said more bile acids increased cancer growth. And when they were at the lowest level they tested, they saw that it reduced cell growth, right? Less bile acids, less problems. More bile acids, more problems. Less bile acids, less problems. And then they say cells incubated with 50 micromoles GCDC or 10 micromoles CDC had higher P molar concentrations of the bile acids than controls. They were soaking up the bile acids. Soaking them up like a sponge. Cancer is an attempt by your body to isolate toxins. Cancer is not trying to kill you. It is a reaction to toxicity. It is a last-ditch effort by your body to save your life. Your body will store everything it possibly can in your liver and your body fat, and then cancer starts. Okay? This study suggests that naturally occurring bile acids influence the growth and steroid receptor function of human breast cancer cells. Well, that's interesting. And now we have something that is related to TUDCA, TUDCA, and UDCA, UDCA, which are, UDCA is a pharmaceutical that they give to people, ursodeoxycholic acid. It is a secondary bile acid, the worst kind. And TUDCA, which a lot of people take for their liver health, and they don't understand that they're making the problem worse over time. TUDCA is simply UDCA with a taurine attached. Okay? You're taking a secondary bile acid. You're taking bile acids thinking that you're helping your liver. You're taking the worst kind of bile acids thinking you're helping your liver. And there is long-term research showing that this doesn't work. But let's go into how does ursodeoxycholic acid affect something called breast cancer resistance protein. Breast cancer resistance protein. So here's the study. High doses of ursodeoxycholic acid upregulate the expression of placental breast cancer resistance protein in patients affected by intrahepatic cholestasis of pregnancy. What was their aim? To determine if placental breast cancer resistance protein able to transport bile acids is regulated by UDCA in intrahepatic cholestasis of pregnancy. Wait, did they just say breast cancer resistance protein binds to bile acids? Breast cancer resistance protein binds to bile acids. What do you think it's doing? Do you think it's trying to protect you from those bile acids? Maybe it helps keep the bile acids going somewhere to help detox them as opposed to sending them into the sponge of the cancer of the breast cells. So it's regulated by UDCA in intrahepatic cholestasis. Okay, conclusions. Our results confirm that breast cancer resistance protein is expressed only on the apical membrane of the syncytiotrophoblasts, and show that ICP treatment with high-dose UDCA significantly upregulates placental breast cancer resistance protein expression. Giving a toxic secondary bile acid increases the production of breast cancer resistance protein. Are you catching it? Do you think somebody might be like, oh, this is a good thing? No. Your body making antibodies and binding proteins is a sign that you're being poisoned. Antibodies bind to poisons. That's what they do. Why do you think antibodies go up after you get the pokey jab? Because there's poisons in it? There's a thing called retinoic acid, cellular retinoic acid binding protein and retinol binding protein. And there's all sorts of binding proteins for iron, and there's all sorts of binding proteins for copper. These are toxic things. That is why your body must protect itself so much from them. Ceruloplasmin is not something you want to push higher because it means you got more copper in you. Oh, people. So I think we covered cancer and bile acids. They find higher bile acids in cystic tissue, cancer tissue. Bile acid issues are found in all sorts of different cancers and immune-mediated stuff, and it's associated with higher heart disease. Are you seeing that this is the root cause? This is it. This is where we need to fix. And some of you who go and read in the research and you don't realize what you're doing, some things show short-term benefits in studies, and people's symptoms may feel better for a little while because they stop the bile production. And that bile, the 7-dehydroxy cholesterol is backing up in your liver. You are forming fatty liver. You are storing everything in your liver, and that's why you feel better, because your liver doesn't bitch and moan, generally. Your liver doesn't complain until it's really messed up. And so you just start making more and more fatty liver, feeling better, thinking, this is great. I'm going to take this supplement forever. Everything's going to go great. My new diet, woohoo. And then later, when your liver can't store anymore and it starts becoming, it probably gets into the start of cirrhosis, then the stuff hits the fan. And then you wonder, why did this disease happen? I'm doing my perfect keto diet, or I'm eating tons of nose to tail carnivore, or I'm doing my vegan diet. I don't understand why this all happened, because your liver took all the punishment it could, and now it's been broken. And then disease comes. And then people try to double down on what they were doing. Oh, I'm going to take more copper. Oh, I'm going to eat more liver. Oh, I'm going to do more B vitamins. These very things that caused their problem in the first place, they double down on them and they don't work. And they wonder why it worked before. This is why I tell people this is not a game. Because the liver doesn't complain until it's really messed up. Many other organs fail before the liver does. Your liver, when your liver fails, if you don't get a liver transplant, you're dead. But the liver can take the most punishment of anywhere in your body, any organ in your body. Your kidneys will go before your liver, generally. Why would your kidneys go? Because when your liver can't handle all the toxicity and your liver puts bile into the blood, what is the next line of defense? It's your kidneys. When your liver can't handle it and your kidneys can't handle it, what is your next line of detox defense? It's your skin. When you have toxins coming out in your bile, you poop them out. You leave that behind, right? When your kidneys come across toxins and toxic bile, they turn it into urine, which can greatly irritate your kidneys, but it can also irritate your bladder. And then you pee it out and you leave it behind. But what happens when toxins are coming up, bubbling out through your skin? Not only are they damaging everything that gets them out to the skin, but then they just sit there on your skin. You just basically moisturized your skin with toxic bile and poisons. And then we wonder why we're getting skin diseases. By the time things are coming out of your skin, this means your liver can't keep up, your kidneys can't keep up, and now you're pushing it out through your skin. That's the order of detox. How did I know I was getting better? When my psoriasis went away. That was one of the first things to go away. So, now that we covered all that, I want to do a couple quick papers on lactoferrin. So if lactoferrin was to, in theory, help balance out your iron in your system, help balance out your copper in your system, and especially get rid of toxic copper, which is all copper, and fix the bile ducts, which I have research on that too. I didn't pull that up today. Fix the bile ducts, fix the liver, fix leaky gut. Oh, I I have a paper on lactoferrin fixing intestinal permeability, which is leaky gut. So if it fixed all of those parts that allowed bile into your blood, we should see lactoferrin helping with anything and everything, shouldn't we? So let's go into that. Well, we're focusing on cancer today. So here's the paper, Lactoferin's anti-cancer properties, safety, selectivity, and wide range of action. In this review, we outlined the anti-cancer properties of lactoferrin, an iron-binding glycoprotein of the innate, your own immune defense. Lactoferrin shows high bioavailability after oral administration, high selectivity towards cancer cells, and a wide range of molecular targets controlling tumor proliferation, survival, migration, invasion, and metastasization. Of note, lactoferrin is able to promote or inhibit cell proliferation and migration, depending upon whether it acts upon normal or cancerous cells, respectively. Importantly, lactoferrin administration is highly tolerated and does not present significant adverse effects. Moreover, lactoferrin can prevent development or inhibit cancer growth by boosting adaptive immune response. So that's a review. That's based on all sorts of studies. They were making these general comments based on all sorts of studies. You can go look at the references at that paper if you want. So then we have next paper, lactoferrin and cancer in different cancer models. Quoting, lactoferrin is a multifunctional protein and it's an essential element of innate immunity. Lactoferrin is a natural forming iron-binding glycoprotein with antibacterial, antioxidant, and anti-carcinogenic effects. It is produced in exocrine glands and is secreted in many external fluids as a first line of defense. Lactoferrin also has the capacity to induce apoptosis and inhibit proliferation in cancer cells, as well as restore white and red blood cell levels after chemotherapy poisoning. This review focuses on the therapeutic effect of bovine-sourced cow dairy lactoferrin has on various forms of cancer in various models. Okay, now this, I'm just going to tear through this one because this is a long paragraph or section of this paper. Lactoferrin from milk, nutraceutical and pharmacological properties. This is from section 4 of this paper. Anti-cancer activity of orally administered lactoferrin. Here we go. The process of carcinogenesis includes the initial occurrence of genetic alterations which can lead to the inactivation of tumor suppressor genes and further accumulation of genetic alterations during tumor progression. Silencing or downregulation of the lactoferrin gene in cells is usually related to the occurrence of certain diseases, especially carcinomas. I'm going to take a break here. Vitamin A, so your lactoferrin in your body, what they're talking about here is the lactoferrin gene in cells. Where is lactoferrin made in your body? Your body makes human lactoferrin. Where is it made? Epithelial cells and neutrophils. What if I were to tell you that I've done this in the past? What if I were to tell you that vitamin A toxicity, vitamin A damages the epithelial cells and the neutrophils? And I have research on this. So therefore, vitamin A toxicity all by itself would damage your own lactoferrin production. So now that you understand just that one thing can damage your lactoferrin producing cells, I'm going to read this sentence again. Silencing or downregulation of the lactoferrin gene in cells is usually related to the occurrence of certain diseases, especially carcinomas. Continuing. Table 1 summarizes the identified anti-cancer properties, activities of lactoferrin and its derivative peptides, among which the lactoferricin, see paragraph lactoferrin peptides, and among which just bad English here, among which the lactoferricin, that's the end of the sentence. Lactoferrin and subsequently its peptides is one of the most studied nutraceutical proteins, showing considerable potential for preventing the different stages of cancer, including initiation, promotion, and progression. Usually, alterations of the lactoferrin gene in cells are associated with an increased incidence of cancer. Several studies suggest that exogenous treatment with lactoferrin and its derivatives can efficiently inhibit the growth of tumors and reduces susceptibility to cancer. Right here. Several studies suggest that exogenous from the outside, taking in lactoferrin from the outside, exogenous treatment with lactoferrin and its derivatives can efficiently inhibit the growth of tumors and reduces susceptibility to cancer. The effect of apo and hololactoferrin in inhibiting tumor development and reducing growth and metastasis of solid tumors was also observed by Kanwar et al. And Suda et al. Actually, lactoferrin and its derivatives can be an effective anti-cancer treatment if combined with other therapeutic agents or if encapsulated in carriers after appropriate modifications. It is interesting to note that some studies have already begun to use these approaches to increase the cytotoxic effects of lactoferrin and its derivatives. Oral lactoferrin accelerated reconstitution of humoral and cellular immune responses during chemotherapy. People were being poisoned and they gave them lactoferrin and it helped their immune system. Induced immunosuppression in mice, suggesting it could be employed to overcome tamoxifen-induced immune suppression. And indeed, Kanwar and co-workers showed that the oral administration of bovine lactoferrin could improve the chemotherapeutic effects of tamoxifen in the treatment of estrogen receptor negative breast cancers. Orally administered bovine lactoferrin improves the chemotherapeutic effects of tamoxifen in the treatment of basal-like breast cancer in mice, inducing significantly higher cancer cell death and cytotoxicity in a dose-dependent manner in cancer cells than the normal intestinal cells. As combination therapy becomes increasingly popular, it is likely that lactoferrin will continue to be studied for its potential value as a primary or adjuvant additional agent in the treatment of cancer. Clinical trials involving the use of this protein in cancer therapy are ongoing, and relatively low cytotoxicity of lactoferrin and its derivatives as compared with known anti-cancer drugs, along with the lack of data about the mechanisms of action of the anti-cancer drugs, is likely to encourage the clinical use of lactoferrin in cancer treatment. Okay? This is important. This is really important. There we go. So I know I've been talking this whole time. Let me get these studies in here. I hope that's the right one. Anyway, they're all in the document. They're all in the Google Doc. Next time I won't paste these. I'll just tell you to go to the Google Doc. So, all the things that we've been taught mainstream and mainstream alternative people. So don't think that these alternative people, the biggest alternative people, are controlled opposition. They are feeding you just enough truth to get you to believe them, and then they're telling you the wrong things, the distinctly wrong things. You're being lied to from every angle. And I'm here to uncover that. And the people in my network, there are people in my network uncovering stuff that's just amazing. I would really want you to know that the initial nutritional research studies were really heavily funded by the Rockefellers. And we've been told that we need all this calcium and vitamin A and vitamin D and all this stuff that we could pretty much, if we didn't drink milk, and I know lactoferrin is from milk, but it's the easiest one to get. It's just an isolated protein, but all this early research on dairy and vitamin A being good for you and vitamin D in food being good for you and calcium, we need so much calcium. This was all funded by the Rockefellers. Do you think they have your best interests at heart? You think about that. And if you don't know who the Rockefellers are, this channel might be a bit too much for you. You need to go back and learn who the Rockefellers are. Bankers. Why would they want to find things? Do you know that the big thing about soy, why soy came up, is they had all this soy waste. And they needed to figure out a way, soy protein waste, and they needed to figure out a way to sell it to make money. What are bankers mostly interested in? Oh, so then they started selling soy protein as healthy. And people started gobbling it up. And now look at the epidemics of soy boys and other problems we have today. They will sell you anything they can, especially waste products or things they can make cheaply, and lie to you and tell you it's healthy. That's what they do. And hopefully if you're here, you're starting to get it. It's not fun to make this realization. It is not fun to realize we have all been duped. If you think we've been lied to in politics and economics and food, I'm going to tell you that the nutrition science is just as corrupt and just as biased. And I'm sitting here just trying to ferret out what the truth actually is. And based on the results I'm getting with treating people, it seems to be working. But we are having to undo. This is the thing. Again, this is not a game. The thing you have to understand is if you undertake this on your own, you are trying to get decades worth. You have decades worth, over decades. Likely you're probably at least 20 years old if you've been listening to this. So you have at least 2 decades, right? Multiple decades. You have decades worth of poisons that have come into you, whether you realized it or not, whether you put them in there thinking they were good for you, or whether whoever did it to you, right? If you want to get better, you take responsibility for where you're at. You take responsibility for where you're at. Don't blame other people. We just take responsibility for where we're at. We're going to move forward. You have to get decades worth of poisons out of your liver. It's a poison on the way in. It's a poison on the way out. If you do it too fast, you won't feel good. If you do the wrong things, you're going to shove it all right back in your liver and it's going to stay there. You ever take a supplement and feel better from symptoms and then you stop the supplement? And it's not an essential nutrient. We're not talking about essential nutrients here. We're talking about all the weird crap they have in supplement stores these days. You take a supplement and you feel better, and then when you stop the supplement, you feel worse. Do you know what that means? While you took the supplement, it was shoving everything back into your liver. And then when you stopped the supplement, you stopped shoving everything back into your liver. Your liver is even more toxic than it was before because you were just hiding the toxic bile. And it's all starting to come out again and come out into your blood. And your symptoms come back just as bad or worse than they were before. That explains why people will take a supplement and feel better, and then they stop taking it and they feel worse, and they go, oh my gosh, I have to get back on this. Same thing happens with antidepressants and anti-anxiety meds. Go look up fluoxetine and fatty liver. Fatty liver is this process. It is you doing things, whether you know it or not, that are shoving things in your liver. That's how it works. And that's how people feel better for a little while, and then when they stop, they feel worse. So, let's get into the questions. Sarah asks, hi, Dr. Smith, is a receding hairline a possible detox symptom? Hair loss has always been an issue, but now it's moving to being very noticeable on my forehead. I have met other ladies struggling as well. Well, a receding hairline, I mean, just so y'all know, they talk about it in men who wear man buns now. And if you pull your hair back, it will tug on your hairs and pull them out over time, and they don't always come back. Like it is normal for, let's say, dancers who are always putting their hair up in tight buns and pulling their hair back to start to get a receding hairline. It's almost like you can look at women in their 30s and tell who was a dancer because their hairline goes back. I just naturally have a gigantic forehead like my dad. Very genetic. So no, I've never worn tight hair buns or anything like that. Anyway, the hair stuff. Well, I mean, why is loss of hair and balding and all this such a big issue these days? Because we all have messed up livers. Now, I think we've talked about this, you and I personally, about potentially pushing things too hard, too fast. And this is why I just went over, this is not a game. You're getting decades worth of poisons out of your liver. And if you do it too fast, one of the ways that toxins come out, right, is through our skin. Well, if it's going through your skin, what's it bypassing? It's going right by your hair follicles, right? And what supplies your hair follicles? The blood. I was just talking to another gentleman, Andrew Baird, on the network about this, and he's actually getting some hair regrowth, and we're seeing it with, other people have told us they can see the little hairs coming back, but I actually believe that this is one of the last parts of the process to respond positively to this, because whether we like it or not, hair is not critical to our survival. Your body is going to put its effort into fixing your kidneys and your liver and other things that are essential to your survival first. Hair on your head, while people really want it, is not essential to your survival. So, what I talk to people about over on the detox program is, if you're having these issues, you are pushing something too hard. And if you push things too hard, you get too much bile in your blood. And then the bile in your blood. Wait, let me just go do something. Let's go. Hold on. Serum, bile, alopecia, PubMed. Let's see if we can find anything easy. Well, here's a paper, a severe case of drug-induced liver injury. Gosh, who talks about that? After gemcitabine administration, a highly probable causality grading as assessed by the updated RUCAM diagnostic scoring system. So, gemcitabine is an anti-neoplastic drug. Oh, wait, a chemotherapy drug causing liver problems? Used in several forms of advanced pancreatic, lung, breast, ovarian, and bladder cancer. Common side effects include bone marrow suppression, fatigue, who out there is tired, diarrhea, nausea, gastrointestinal upset, rash, alopecia, and stomatitis. Alopecia is the hair loss, okay? What did they find? Or what do they find with this drug? Moreover, on the liver biopsy, there were histological findings of mild to moderate portal hepatitis, eosinophilia, bile duct injury. Bile duct injury, what is that? That's cholestasis. And mild parasinusoidal fibrosis, suggesting drug damage. So, if you push the detox too hard and you are getting too much bile in your blood, because it's not all fixed yet. This takes time to repair. Every time you push toxic bile out your liver, it damages everything it touches. So until your bile is not as toxic anymore to cause that damage, you can, it's like tonguing a cut in your mouth, where you keep tonguing it so it doesn't heal. You just keep irritating it and it's not healing as fast as you would like. And then finally, hopefully, I know I've had to do this, you go, stop touching that damn thing with your tongue. It's not going to heal until you stop touching it with your tongue. And you stop touching it with your tongue and then it heals, right? So, but do we ever get to stop making bile and releasing bile? No, you don't get to stop. If you did, you die because you get so toxic. But every time that bile comes out of the liver cells, goes into the bile ducts, goes into the intestines, it damages everything it touches. So you're going to have bile going into your blood, which is why you were sick in the first place. But you're going to continue to have bile in the blood the whole time we're trying to get you better, because we can't just band-aid it all up and seal it all up right away. It takes time. And if you push things too hard, we can have symptoms that are associated with liver injury, being that hair is one of them. So this isn't a game. People push it too hard. There's two things that are happening. The words I use, and I'm not saying this just about you, Sarah, this is generally, people are either getting impatient, because I tell them this is a years long process. They either get impatient or they get greedy. Neither of those things end well. And so I keep telling them, slow down, calm down, slow down, and they keep pushing it harder because they want it to be over and they think that more is better. And I go, no, more is not better. better is better. So, for those of you out there pushing things, calm down. It took you decades to get here. You're not going to get out in 6 months. There are people who thought they were going to get out of this in 6 months. No, this is not a weekend detox. This is not a week-long cleanse. This is not a little retreat. This is legit getting your body to detox itself all day long, every day. We are decreasing the intake of toxins. We are increasing the rate of intake of important mineral nutrients, especially that are necessary for your body to detox. And then we do the icing on the cake, which is the lactoferrin, which directly addresses the liver and the bile ducts and the gut lining and the gut biome. Okay. So I think I answered this. Sarah asked again, I was curious if it was detox related, pushing too hard, more bile in the blood, or possibly COVID related since I've seen other women struggle with it. Let me post this paper again. I'm not going to go into this deeper today. I'm going to do a whole video on this sometime. Here is the paper. Liver damage and exposure to toxic concentrations of endogenous within the body, stored within the body, retinoids, vitamin A, in the pathogenesis, causation of COVID-19 disease. Hypothesis by my favorite researcher ever, Anthony Mawson. I'm going to tell you that what COVID is a massive bile dump. That is what causes all the symptoms. What triggers that massive bile dump, that's where things get a little weird. But COVID and the flu, I have another paper from Mawson on the flu. The flu is a massive bile dump. But COVID seems to be a bile dump on another level. So when you dump all that bile into your system, what can happen? Well, if you have cholestasis or liver injury, some of it's going back into your blood. This is what causes all the systemic symptoms. So it goes back into your blood, and then it could cause, what did we just talk about? A symptom that it could cause? Alopecia. What is long COVID? Long COVID is aggravated or worsened cholestasis, aka liver injury, caused by that massive bile dump. You must remember that your bile itself is the most toxic fluid in the body. If you just think of it as a horrible acid that is burning everything it touches, even the liver cells that make it, then you start to understand just how nasty this stuff is. So it goes everywhere. And if this is one of your weak links, that's how it shows up for you. So yes, other COVID is related to cholestasis. Why do kids not seem to have problems with COVID in general? Why are they so much more resilient to COVID? Here's another example. Here's another idea. Why do you eat small fish from the ocean over big fish? Because the small fish don't live as long. They're smaller. They don't accumulate as much mercury and other poisons before you would eat them. Now, I'm not saying, don't take that analogy wrong. But what about human kids would be different than adults? They're not as toxic. They have the magical energy of youth that helps them to be healthier in general. So their liver is less toxic. They don't have as much cholestasis. When they get whatever this thing called COVID is, they don't have all this nastiness of decades worth of poisons to dump into their blood. So they don't have problems. What do we see in adults? Well, we see obese adults having big problems with COVID. Hey, have you ever gone on my channel and looked at the vitamin A and obesity video? That would be an interesting one to look at, right? What do we know about multiple conditions? People who have more conditions have more of a likelihood of having big problems with COVID. Why would that be? Because the more health conditions you have, the more toxic you are, the more toxic your liver is, the more toxic the bile will be when you dump it out, when whatever this thing is hits you. It's as simple as that. So yes, could it be related to this thing we call COVID? Yes, it could be. Absolutely. Could it be worse since then? Yes. Now, I haven't gone over this today, but if you want to go and go on PubMed and search for COVID and lactoferrin, or COVID and that SARS-CoV-2, same thing, go and have fun with that because the studies are outrageously good. Maggie asks, what are the cures for tooth decay of the dentin? Actually, Grant Genereux, the guy who introduced me to vitamin A toxicity, and you can go to his website at Genereux. Here, I'll put it here. Genereux.blog. He wrote some free ebooks about it, and we were talking about teeth the other day in the inner circle. So the inner circle is it's what I'm going to do right after this. I go on the Love Your Liver network, the detox program website over at nutritiondetective.com, and I'm going to go take specific questions about all this stuff that we're doing. This is where I go over my new discoveries, and people there get to hear it first. I do this every week. Grant Genereux comes on about once a month to answer questions, and I really appreciate him doing that. But yeah, he was going over how his enamel has come back. He's been doing the vitamin A detox longer than anybody. He's been doing it, I think, going on 7 years now. And he's been doing the same diet every day, 3 times a day or 2 times a day for 7 years. Beef or bison, beans, and rice. Now, I'm not a huge fan of people eating rice every day because there is an arsenic issue. And yeah, I just, personally, I don't get along with rice very well. Maybe it's the arsenic, but maybe it's the aldehydes in it. I don't know. But he said he's seen his enamel come back. There is a ton of research on vitamin A causing dental problems. There's a case in the literature. I mean, if you don't know, acid reflux, or if you've heard of people vomiting up bile, right? What's one thing that's yellow that if you had a very mild case of it that you really couldn't tell, what if it was coming back up into your mouth all day? Just a little bit by a little bit. If bile is yellow, what color do you think that would stain your teeth? Oh, yellow? It's the most toxic fluid in your body? Oh, it's damaging your teeth. So if a person was saying they were worried about their teeth, and I was going into, well, do you have any history of acid reflux? Do you have any history of hiatal hernias? Do you have any history of nausea? We start looking for signs of bile coming back up their intestines. But then the other thing is we know that vitamin A and cholestasis, vitamin A toxicity and cholestasis are associated with damaging the bone, like in terms of osteoporosis and osteopenia. Over 3,000 units a day of vitamin A, which is like hardly any for most normal people, that's like what they eat at breakfast, has been shown to worsen osteoporosis. Well, what are your teeth? They're just a bony extension, really. They're basically bone. So if vitamin A and cholestasis damage bone, it would make sense that they would damage teeth. So you could be damaging your teeth from the inside because of the chemistry. You could also be damaging your teeth from the outside in a way because of the bile coming back up. And the bile's just attacking it. And then if you had vitamin A toxicity or cholestasis, you would be making less lactoferrin. Where do we secrete lactoferrin? Into all of our bodily fluids, including saliva. And I have an article on here. Where does vitamin A toxicity go in your body? Let me go to my research forum. And if you didn't know about this, this is where I used to do a lot of my writing on vitamin A toxicity when I was first learning about it. And where does vitamin A toxicity show up? It shows up in all the fluids of your body. It shows up in your feces, urine, sweat, saliva, tears, and even your breath. They actually even found it in the breath. it gets there via cholestasis. And I told you that vitamin A toxicity damages the very, very cells that make lactoferrin, the epithelial cells and the neutrophils. Gosh, so if you had more vitamin A in your bodily fluids, what do you think that would imply about your level of lactoferrin in those bodily fluids? Probably less. In that article, it shows, in a dental article, they're talking about how beta carotene stains the teeth yellow. It's all connected. I do remember actually at one point of my detox where I was probably pushing it too hard, because I've done that, because I lead from the front. I have tried everything that we talk about on the detox program. It's known in science that any good ethical scientist experiments on himself first. I was the first one to take this, long before I talked about it on the inner circle. I do everything first. And there was a point where I was pushing things too hard, and I noticed that my teeth were looking a bit yellow. They don't look that way anymore. I was probably pushing detox too hard, and now I don't have that issue anymore. This was before I stopped coffee, but I started getting less yellowing of my teeth before I stopped coffee. And now then when you stop coffee, which is a poison, the polyphenols are a poison, phenol is a poison. You put a bunch of them together, it's a poison. And caffeine is a poison to your liver. It's an insecticide. Don't believe the coffee industry funded studies by $1 billion industry where they try to claim that coffee is a health food. It is not. So, let me see. I always jump ahead. Hope says, if we are not feeling well enough to exercise, could massaging that area be a good idea? Or would that be like exercising too much if you can't handle it? You mean the liver area? I'm guessing. I know I wasn't following. I don't follow the chat along. Massage. Well, one of the things for people who don't tolerate exercise, let's say you go and you exercise some amount and some type of exercise, and you are wrecked afterwards. I know this because this used to happen to me. There was a certain amount of exercise, like if all the things that cause bile to dump, if I went outside in the heat and I was sweating and I was doing physical labor and I was doing all these things that are known to cause bile dumping, and I had cholestasis, worse than I do now, because I can tell you I can exercise hard now and I don't get wrecked like I used to. But I would do these things and I would get wrecked. And I would wonder, why does this happen? There's the normal agitators, but it has been shown that exercise causes bile dumping. Well, I want to connect this to, there's the actual physical warmth. Warmth tends to cause some bile dumping. I'm not saying bile dumping is bad. I'm saying if you got cholestasis and you push it too hard and you get too much bile in your blood, you're going to feel like garbage. It's going to cause your symptoms. So think about the core muscles, right? Around your torso, right? You got your torso and there's muscles like your stomach muscles, your oblique muscles, your erectors in the back, your quadratus lumborum. You got all these muscles around your core. And when you exercise, you're going to be squeezing those muscles for stability and movement. You're going to be doing a lot of this. And that's going to kind of massage your liver. You know, it's squeezing it. If you do too much of that and you dump too much bile from the actual physical squeezing of like your liver and your gallbladder, like a sponge, right? You dump too much bile, you're still cholestatic, you get too much of that bile in your blood, you're going to feel like garbage. So I don't know that massaging it would be, I mean, there might be an amount of massage that is maybe helpful and you don't push over that limit where you feel worse. Or, you know, usually the first time people are going to overdo it. I don't really know how to massage the liver too well because you got the rib cage in front of it. If your liver extends down past your rib cage, it's fatty liver. And I don't know how much pushing on a fatty liver is going to be a good idea. And if you had a really sketchy gallbladder, if you push on it too hard, I don't know if you could rupture it or not. So I'm not going to say that, like, if I was going to do something directly for my liver, topical magnesium over the liver would not be a bad idea. Doing a charcoal poultice over the liver, not be a bad idea. Dissolving lactoferrin in water, a bit of water, applying that over the liver, not be a bad idea. With charcoal poultices, I recommend, instead of using flaxseed for them, I recommend using psyllium fiber, very finely ground psyllium fiber, to mix with the charcoal to make a poultice. Just look up the recipes on the internet. Charcoalremedies.com and charcoaltimes.com are good websites for that stuff. But I don't know if I would massage it directly. I wouldn't be trying to dig under your liver and do that stuff. Or I might do, I used to be like, I used to do a lot of infrared laser therapy here, and I have a machine here. I might do red light therapy or infrared light therapy over the liver, but you got to be careful. Start slow, because you're going to start moving stuff. Okay. But I've never really like, as an example for me, I know what works for me and not. I can tell you that one of my biggest symptoms of cholestasis when I would overdo it was I would get a very, very stiff lower back flanks area. What do I think that was? Well, what did Grant almost die of? Grant almost died of chronic kidney disease. And to tell you how much this stuff works, I mean, Grant talks about his eczema a lot in his book, because that was actually what bothered him the most. But he was ready to go on dialysis. The doctors were ready to put him on dialysis, basically. And he was bad. He was jaundiced. He had eczema all over, terrible eczema, and he was chronic kidney disease. That's all gone now. His nephrologist, his kidney doctors say that he's the only person that they know of who has recovered from chronic kidney disease. And what did he do? What was the simple thing he did? He took all the vitamin A out of his diet, and he basically ate a very clean diet. That some people would say, oh, it's nutrient deficient in this and this and this. And I go, well, are you going to argue with success here? Are you that lacking? You're going to argue with that success. The only guy that his nephrologists have ever seen recover from chronic kidney disease that was ready to go on dialysis. Good choice. Good argument. You go. So, but what do I think that pain that in my flanks and my lower back was? Which would especially come on. Wait. It would especially come on if I did anything core related in my exercises. If I did deadlifts, which like are the biggest core exercise you could do, I was wrecked for days. Think about, I was squeezing my core. I was squeezing out. Think of that sponge. The liver is like a sponge. It's soaking everything up. But then you do a lot of core exercises and you start squeezing that sponge and you squeeze the bile out. And I would get low back and flank stiffness. I hardly get it anymore. But what was going on? All that bile that was going into my blood, what's the second part of the detox order? The kidneys. That's where it was going for me. My liver never hurt. I never had elevated liver enzymes. I just had some kidney discomfort, referred pain from the kidneys. So, yeah, I wouldn't. If you're not feeling well enough to exercise yet, I don't know if I would push the exercise, push the massage on it. And I don't quite understand, for those who talk about castor oil packs. I want to know the mechanism of what it's doing, because I don't trust putting oil on an area that is full of ricin, a known toxin. I am not so sure about that. You want to do it? Go ahead, but I'm not gonna endorse it until I understand what it's actually doing. Castor oil does contain ricin. Ricin is a well-known poison. You do absorb oils through the skin. Somebody's out by my front door. Let me look at this. So Bob Dylan said not ulcerative colitis. Oh, I got to get going. I got my inner circle. I'm sorry. I've been talking too long. So if you guys have the questions that I didn't get to today, bring them to next week. I'll be back. And hope you all enjoyed it. Remember, there's the Google Doc with all these links on it. If I put the wrong links or whatever, they're all in the Google Docs. They should be right. And if they're not right there, just look up the title of the study. You can find it yourself. So hope you enjoyed it. Hope you come join us, 800 people strong over at the Love Your Liver program. That's the do-it-yourself part. If you want to work with me directly, I'll put the email down here. It's admin@nutritiondetective.com. Email Julie. I do free 15-minute chats to talk about your particular situation if you want. There's working with me doing the hair analysis and the blood tests. I only do 4 blood tests, so we don't get crazy on it. And then there's just the do-it-yourself part of the Love Your Liver program, which you get if you work with me on a testing and consultation package. You get the free access to the Love Your Liver program for a lifetime. So, because you need all that information to do my work fully. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the testimonials. If you missed the testimonials at the start, you can either watch this again or you can go to the Google Doc. They're copied and pasted in there. So hope you all have a great weekend. I will see you all next time. Bye now.